Well, Mr. Chris Hudson,
Hey,
Artist of the Month for the Heartland Song Network for November
November.
2020. We've about made it through this year.
Just about.
Three more
Yes,
days.
3 more days, and yeah, hopefully we get past November 3rd. Okay.
Yeah, well, my birthday's the 6th, so I'm counting on it. We've got to get through that next 3 days. In preparing for this conversation, you're one of the few musicians I've met in Kansas City that's from here originally
Hmm.
and really has never lived
No,
anywhere
never
else.
lived anyplace else.
Gone and tried the Nashville thing or LA or whatever.
No,
And
no,
then
I've lived here the whole time.
you lived here the whole time. Blue Springs High School.
Blue Springs High School, then just kind of moved into the Kansas City Midtown area. I just lived in Midtown, the entire
But
time.
I get it. I mean,
Yeah,
I've been here for a long time and I don't have any plans
yeah.
to
Yeah.
leave. Do you come from a musical family?
My dad was the most musical of the family, but basically my entire family is working class railroaders. They were all switchmen. My dad was a switchman, and
My dad sold freight
yeah.
for his entire
So he,
career.
so yeah, my dad was just when he was a kid, he was into writing poetry, and he got together with his buddies in the '70s, and they all played guitar, and they played the song "You Ain't Going Nowhere." I remember that when I was about 5 years old. Just sitting around, the table having a good time, and he learned how to play guitar. Had a kind of an old Montgomery Ward's guitar. It was great. It was
I
kind
think
of
those are worth a lot of money now if you
yeah,
still have
yeah,
them.
yeah.
And
So
they're playable.
yeah, it. So I remember he put that in the corner, and he just told me not to touch it.
Did he encourage or discourage you from
Oh, he
pursuing
encouraged
it?
he encouraged me completely.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, he said not to touch the guitar, and I ended up just breaking the strings. He never said anything to me about it.
Kind of like the Randall knife story with Guy Clark.
Right?
Don't touch the knife, but he did and broke off the tip, and then
Yeah, yeah. But my dad,
nobody ever said anything about
yeah.
it.
So basically, it's kind of that got me into playing, and I was an only child, so I mean, he would take me to all of his friends' jam sessions. So I hung out listening to music and did my homework and fell asleep. Just kind of listening to people playing music.
So it sounds pretty ingrained.
It was definitely ingrained for sure. And
What was your dad listening to? What kind of music were you
oh,
listening to?
he's totally into Neil Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. He liked Sweet Art of the Rodeo, the Birds album. Um, Jackson Brown was definitely always being played. Um, you know,
Did you start with the guitar? Did you take piano lessons?
uh,
Or
I had a guitar, and then Blue Springs, I think it was sixth grade, I got into the school band, played clarinet, so I learned how to read with clarinet. Um, and then kind of continued in clarinet for, I don't know, about 4 years, and started guitar actually when I think it was, I mean, for sure guitar, taking lessons when I was about 12. And that was pretty, I just started playing forever.
did you have a memorable music teacher?
Yeah, yeah. Walt Chambers, it was his name.
Uncle Walt. I know him. We call him Uncle Walt.
Oh, really? You know
Yeah,
Walt
I
Chambers?
do know Walt
Wow.
Chambers.
Yeah, he was my teacher. He
He's a
lived.
good friend of Carl
Yes, yes,
Butler's.
he is. He plays with
I've
him all
seen
the
him
time.
play many times in
Yeah,
the
Walt
Gospel
is
Lounge.
an amazing guitarist. And he was.
God, it's a small town.
Yeah, he taught at this place. I mean, he was working at this place called Allied Music over in Independence, and I remember just walking in there on a summer day with my dad, and it was just kind of like this old kind of dingy guitar store. He was just sitting around jamming, and he took me downstairs into this lesson studio that was getting rid of it. It was kind of dilapidated. That's all I remember. And I had a guitar that I was like carving all my favorite bands in, with a knife myself. For some reason I thought that was cool. And he's like, "Oh, you like Van Halen?" And he's like, "Have you heard of Richie Blackmore from Deep Purple?" Yeah. So he led me totally. The very first lesson, he was like getting me into other types of
They
music.
still play together. They call themselves the Guitar Army.
Yep, yeah. Carl's trying to get me to come and play with that. Hopefully that occurs, because I would like to play with Walt again.
Oh my goodness, that's a full circle
Yeah, yes,
thing
it is.
right there.
It is. And, Walt basically, he studied with Douglas Mead at the Conservatory. He was classical, has a major in classical guitar.
See, I did not know that about him.
And so basically I started classical guitar. I mean, I got grounded basically. My dad said, you can take classical guitar and I'll play guitar. So I took classical guitar lessons from Walt.
It sounds like he understood and appreciated the value in that and how that was going to, make or break you.
Exactly.
As to whether you were going to be a player or not.
Right. And so, my dad is huge. Walter is huge. Both of those guys, they got me stable enough to play music, so it was a
When
deal.
did you decide to go to the conservatory? Was that something right out of college, or did you go do
basically, I kind of decided to do that when I got out of high school, but I ended up just going to community college for a couple years so I could just get into the into the conservatory. So I didn't really get into the conservatory until I was about 22, 23. It was 1993.
Probably appreciated it better though. Waiting a little bit.
And I already knew how to play a bunch of pieces by the time I got into Doug's class. And Douglas was, he's a great teacher. He's a tough teacher. But he got me practicing like 8 hours a day at the conservatory. I mean, that was the time, that's how I met Bo, Bo Bledsoe. I mean, we were basically practicing, next to each other in practice rooms. So I mean, I've known him ever since I was in the conservatory.
Well, for those of us who are not musicians and have never set foot inside the conservatory or a music school, how does kind of the day-to-day experience in a music conservatory change? How is it different from going to a regular school? It sounds so intimidating. It's brutal.
But at the same sense, it really, for somebody like myself, it was a great place to go. I was enthralled with it. I practiced for hours on classical guitar.
Do you get to pick what you're going to do, or do they kind of see something in you and try to steer you?
Well, not Walter, but Doug Neat. He was always. He seemed to see and sense that I already knew how to play something, so he kind of let me choose. Kind of, because everything else he definitely wanted me to do this, and this, but I just remember taking his classes, and I had like this entire classical guitar transcribed Bach cello suite. It was cello suite number 1. I had to learn that in 2 semesters.
Don't say you know to me, because I won't.
Well, the cello suite.
I won't or I don't.
So that it's it was transcribed for guitar, and I remember just like going to his class, and the transcription seemed logical, and then he was just always changing the fingerings, and it just seemed like the fingerings just got harder and harder. But it was a good challenge. I got through it. As far as studying other types of music, it was great to be able to play in the jazz bands. So I got really into improvisational stuff.
I was going to ask you that. Do they encourage, or do you have the opportunity to generate music or create your own music, or is it all about learning existing theory and practice?
It's all of the above. How much time do you want to spend, how much time you want to dedicate, and it's purely dedicating all your time to music. So I wrote music. I wasn't really writing lyrics at that point. I was just writing my own classical guitar pieces, but I was also I was playing with, I would take the jazz workshops, and I'd practice with them, some other players. I wasn't just like stuck in the practice room just playing classical guitar. A lot of the other guitarists were doing that. They would never set foot in a jazz workshop. The other thing we had to do was sing in the choir, which was, later on, obviously, it helped me out. I learned how to at least do, proper projection with my voice and stuff that way. Anyways, the school was definitely, carved me out. It was definitely, it made me into something,
Were you always a graphic or visual artist as well? Because
Yeah.
you kind of remind me of the Chad Elliott and Bob Walkenhorst of the world, that not only have this part of your brain that is able to create and play music, but you have this visual aesthetic as well.
So there was definitely a massive choice when I got out of high school. You know, I had 2 feet, you know, 1 foot going possibly to the Art Institute and one going to the Conservatory. So there definitely.
And how lucky you were to have both of those right in your hometown.
Right. I had to, you know, I was taking tons of visual arts classes. I was taking like continuing education classes over at the Art Institute every single Saturday. So I'd hang out at the Nelson Atkins. And at that point, it wasn't free, but if you had the pass, you could go in.
Right.
So I hung out for hours and hours there, you know. So it was kind of a big part of this kind of getting out of Blue Springs ultimately.
Yeah.
But I had really good friends in Blue Springs too who seriously influenced me. I mean, I had this one friend named Travis who got me into William Blake poetry and mythology and reading like the Beats and, you know, Jack Kerouac and T.S. Eliot and things like that.
Are you a Joseph Campbell fan?
Oh yeah, so we were always that was the, you know, that video got passed around big time. And then we'd watch, you know, every single Stanley Kubrick film that came out, or, you know, Bergman films, and you know Werner Herzog. I mean, so I remember watching Werner Herzog when I was 18 out of Blue Springs, which, you know, if you've been to Blue Springs, it seems kind of like an impossibility that would occur.
Yeah, when I first moved to Kansas City many years ago, the only people that we knew here lived in Blue Springs, and it was a sleepy little burg of about 4,000 people at the time.
Yeah.
And way on the outskirts of Kansas City. So yes, I've seen the evolution or de-evolution of Blue Springs over the years. Since you have both this visual and audio component, if you're feeling kind of stuck in one, can you then kind of switch gears and rely on the other one?
The biggest thing my visual art now is kind of the only way I can describe it, it's a way to like, it's switching gears. It's getting my head out of the music for a while and just going visual.
Do you get stuck with writer's block?
Not really.
No.
That's never, hopefully that never happens, but it does not happen with me. I'm always working on something, always trying to, even if it's crap, I just write it, I'll get it out.
How do you know? What are you working on right now?
What am I working on right now? Well, as far as writing, I've written like several songs in the last few weeks. So right now my lyric writing has just been, it kind of starts out purely as just like poetry. And it's really, there's not really, it's kind of going obviously with kind of what's going on right now. It's more a mirror of what's going on. I'm really into not really being incredibly obvious with what I'm writing about. I'm more into just like writing stuff that's kind of an impression of it. So kind of just showing things as a feeling,
from the standpoint of not being a generative artist or not being a musician or whatever, it seems to me that this period of time, the last 6 or 7 months during the pandemic, those of you that are creative or generative type artists definitely have the advantage over those musicians who are not, who are entertainers and are in,
Right.
cover bands or whatever,
Right.
and really have to rely on the touring and the playing in the bars and restaurants where it's
Right.
mostly covers, because they're entertainers, they're entertaining, and they're being shut down during this period of time and not having that toolkit, to be
Right.
able to generate or create. I really feel for them, and worry about
Right.
this kind
Well,
of
I
artist.
do too. I got lots of friends who are struggling tremendously. I've been struggling a little bit, it hasn't been terrible. I also teach.
Right.
So the teaching has been a huge, it's obviously the bread and butter. It's what I make my dough on.
Yeah, well, I think that's why it serves as a reminder to me why our mission at Heartland Song
Mhm.
Network is so important.
Right.
And that you kind of personify that, because we're trying to elevate the art of songwriting or song crafting through education, collaboration, and
Mhm.
mentorship. And you are an educator,
Right.
You are a collaborator. You're in 3 bands right now.
Right.
And you're a mentor. You're a teacher. So to be able to have
Yeah.
all 3 of those tools,
but it's
you have a better chance of surviving this than most, I think.
Well, but that's honestly, if you stay in this business, you figure out ways of existing. You know, if you are saying that you are going to be a professional musician, you cannot purely rely on the future of things. You know, you have to really focus on the now and adjust on the fly, and that's the hardest part about the experience.
Do you have an opinion on what should be next or what should come next, since this has all essentially been burned to the ground and we're going to be starting over?
Ultimately speaking, what I would love to see, I'd like to see more listening rooms where people actually appreciate the music, actually will listen to the music, and not just sit around talking and drinking and making a bunch of noise. The biggest things about, I love the venues in Kansas City, and I understand that there needs to be, the venues need to make money by selling drinks and food and stuff. But you know, how many times we've been to shows where just like people were just talking and they're like looking at a YouTube or something and cranking it up as loud as they can. Or the
sporting event is going on behind you.
Yeah, I played this one bar up in Belton. That's what was happening. We had the actual, you know,
the game
going on behind us, and people were just looking at that, you know.
Yeah.
But that's the type of gig it was.
Well, you know, as a patron or someone who's been in an audience for many, many years, I find my own evolution as an audience member. I started out with rock and roll and going to festivals and being in crowds with thousands and thousands of people. And as it's evolved over the years, my favorite listening experience is in a listening room or a house concert.
Same here.
Because I want to hear the music, and I don't want to hear about your child's soccer game or whatever. Right. And I was a soccer mom. You know, I get it, but I don't want to hear about it while I'm sitting there trying to listen to.
Right. I've only had to say, talk to people a few times just to tell them to be quiet on the front row, but I have no problem saying it. I'm just, that's just me.
I'm sorry, is my performance getting in the way of your conversation on the phone?
Like, hey man, what's going on over there?
Yeah. What's your most positive experience during this upheaval?
I would say definitely, I got several, big, there's been some incredibly generous people. When it first occurred, everything was completely wiped out money-wise. All my gigs were done. All my teaching jobs were done, everything. Luckily, I did, the second day after the lockdown, I started going virtual. Somehow or the other, I made it happen. But other than that, I still was kind of, I didn't have any cash. It was pretty much it. I had about, $1,000. So there's been some very generous people, donating, helping me out. So, I would say all the...
well, we're not going out anymore. So,
yeah.
There's been a big shift in how our discretionary income is being spent, right. And most of it is being spent supporting our musician friends.
That was one occurrence. There was you guys and a lot of folks were very, very generous to, put out some funds to help us out. It got me through, and I was definitely using it to buy food and pay rent, pay medical bills or pay, just basic things. And then, I got myself totally right back on my feet somehow or the other. That actually gave me a buffer to do it, to be able to get students and people in. And then, the other half, you guys started doing the COVID collaborations. That was great. And I was already making music anyways. I put my studio together, and it was just a perfect setup for that.
We've been real gratified by the response to that. When we first started this organization in February, we didn't know that 30 days later we were going to have to completely pivot on what we were planning to do. But the collaborations, we thought, these people need something to do, and they need to be creative.
Right.
We can't pay them to do it, but let's see what
even
happens.
if it's just a distraction.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it wasn't a distraction. I mean, working with Robert Castillo was great. He was so much fun to work with, and Rich Hutchinson, So both of the ones I've done.
I think Julie's done a great job of pairing people up that don't know each other, and
right. Well,
and the fact that you guys have been able to pull these.
I mean, I knew Fritz, and I've met Robert several times, but I mean, I've been.
That's kind of the exception, though, in terms of the people that were
Yeah.
paired up. They didn't know each other, and they still have never met. We've been doing all this virtually.
I mean, I wasn't. Having long conversations with Fritz, and never really did until like collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with Robert. Robert's a visual artist too. I mean, he does great visual stuff. So I mean, it was great just kind of listening to what he does, and he's an amazing musician. So is Fritz. I mean, Fritz has got multi-instrumental stuff going on all the time. So that was like absolutely perfect fit, because that's kind of what I do too. So we were just, with that collaboration, it was pretty neat, because he already had a song, I had a song, and we were just like, well, let's just see what happens.
And you submitted 2 songs.
Yeah, so that's why we did 2 songs.
Yeah.
It was like, well, to make the collaboration work, it might be better that way. Just go ahead and just do it, because we both have tons of songs.
When you are teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and have your teacher's hat on, is it part of the curriculum to have the children collaborate or write songs together?
Yeah, so I would say with, I teach the garage band program at Kansas City Young Audiences. It's basically that's what that whole thing's about. The more advanced bands definitely will end up writing, for sure. But it's geared from the get-go that way. I mean, so if the kids are wanting to try to sound exactly like their favorite Green Day album, I'm always like, well, you guys don't look like an album to me. You don't look like a CD. You look like Oscar, or Damien, playing guitar, and that's a good song, So that it kind of ends up in, I have to kind of like bring them down to reality, or the idea that they are basically sounding like themselves.
Mm-hmm,
no matter how much they're going to sound like that Green Day album, they're still going to sound like them playing.
Have you had a student that you thought, wow, they really have some potential, or they really got it?
Yeah, I've had a few of them. I mean, it's not, you don't get a ton of them that way, but you also see potential in different ways too, though. So let's say that they're not going to be the ultimate singer-songwriter musician, but they might become a studio engineer, or they might be a producer.
Well, one of the things that you said during one of our conversations that really struck me is the ability to use music to teach math and science.
Yeah. So
how does, kind of
quickly. I mean, it's so with that.
Explain it to me like I'm a 3rd grader, because that's how I probably have to process it.
Well,
how do you teach math and science using music?
Well, so one of the biggest ones I did. So you talked about the collaboration thing. So plug Kansas City Young Audiences. I'll keep doing it, but they've been doing this thing called STEAM, which is also STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. We add the A to it, and it's adding the arts to it. So what we've been doing is a pilot program going into like elementary schools and just schools in general. Okay, and that's been so one of the classes.
A particular age group we're talking about.
Yeah, so this one age group that I did was 4th grade. I mean, so the 4th graders. I went up to like some Liberty school, and they were learning animal adaptations, how do animals adapt to nature, So we did, I did like, we wrote a song about the porcupine and like the polar bear, and then they would have their science courses along with it. And then we do like some kind of visual art component. We do some kind of language component, and then we would do some kind of interpretive dance component too, So I tried to put all those within that, that learning process. So it
sounds a lot more fun than trying to learn something by rote out of a book.
Right. So in like, boring scientific curriculum terms, it's called multimodality, because you're putting all those components in to teaching this subject, and it's great. So yeah, we'll say there's one kid who's better at writing, and then this other kid who's more of a visual learner, and then another kid, has trouble with language. So they're all teaching each other this stuff together. That's what the STEAM
And
thing
all
is.
all of those components are working at the same time. Education, collaboration, and mentorship
Right,
is
right,
all one big,
right.
dare I say it, tasty brew.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the deal. I mean, it really is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something I'm 100% pursuing right now.
Yeah,
As
and
far
that's
as
something that that the Heartland Song Network definitely wants to pursue, because the arts and music have been taken away from these kids,
right,
and now
right,
that all these parents are having to, for the short term, midterm, long term, having to teach their own kids at school for a while,
right,
it would be a lot more fun if the curriculum included that type of dissemination of the information rather than just
right,
trying to get them to learn this by rote out of a book.
right. And the thing is, I mean, the whole idea of STEM, I mean, it is a collaborating kind of thing, and that's what I that's what's really great about doing, trying to add more of an imagination type aspect to it, or more of a creative type aspect to it. So yeah, so the Kennedy Center has created an entire curriculum for this, for like an entire school year. I went to the Kauffman Center like about a year ago, and basically it was blowing my mind. But it's basically they're writing up a curriculum. It's already been written for teachers to start applying it. Question is, hopefully they will. I hope it happens.
Well, hopefully we can help be a catalyst for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, yeah, if you're going to do the teaching of arts and music, that is like one of the things that seems to be missing, in a lot of schools right now. So I mean, if we could figure out a way of making that a part of it as some kind of in-school program, or I mean, basically what I've been doing is I'll spend like 45 or 50 minutes a week with with the teacher and the kids. They'll get to know me. We'll write the songs, and then we'll have a final presentation. It's usually like the way we've been doing it's like an 8-week program. So
now that we're always in a historic time, but we're in a particularly unique and unusual social and historic time right now. In the course of your teaching, does it ever take a social bent or a way to teach or to assimilate what's happening around us right now?
It really, I think you could definitely do that for sure.
Do you ever share your own music with them?
Yeah.
Is it a little too
it's
mature and too
it's
dark?
a little bit too mature. I mean, I can do the William Blake songs. So, I mean, I've done adaptations of William Blake poetry. I mean, I've done like some Shakespeare too. So it's to me, it's a good way of teaching those types of things. I've done that a few times.
What gives you the most satisfaction of all the hats that you're?
I like it all. I mean, there's feeling the satisfaction.
I mean, we're very lucky to have the institutions that you're talking about here.
Right.
The Kaufman, the Conservatory, the Art Institute, and that you have the ability to kind of seamlessly go in and out of those. Your latest project is, speaking of our mutual friend Julie Bennett,
right,
is the multiverse. Is that name indicative of what?
Well, so
because you're both poetry,
right,
especially German poetry.
So we'll go into the quantum mechanics of things. So there's you have universes. you have the universe and you have multiverse. So there's this belief that there are these tiny little universes within universes within universes. So the multiverse means that it's
all.
Yeah. So if you think it's there, So yeah, multiverse definitely you could tie it into like writing songs and lyrics and things. And then her and I, we've been writing tons of songs. I mean,
did this particular project come to be just during the pandemic, or was it something you were talking about?
We were talking about it before the pandemic.
But this gave you the perfect opportunity.
Yeah. So when we were in New Orleans, we were talking about it, and so it's like this juxtaposition: Nazi Germany or the Weimar year, Germany's during right before the war started, and then
The 30s.
yeah, the 30s, 20s, and 30s, and then and after the aftermath too. So she writes about that pretty much throughout the entire album. And then my side of things, obviously, is kind of talking about, dilapidated American dream. And then there's a couple songs I would say definitely reflect our time period for sure. Um, I will say this straight. I try hard. I mean, there are definite songs you could timestamp on me to say that this is why I wrote it, but I really try not to do that.
Yeah, but that's been done. The anti-war songs of the 60s and
Right.
70s that we thought were only going to have relevance to that particular period of
Uh-huh.
time have definitely stood the test of time and are now as relevant, if not more relevant,
Right.
now than they were 50 years ago. So
Right.
I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Well, I mean, my my feeling of a certain writer. Obviously, Bob Dylan is huge. So, "Blowing in the Wind," um, you know, "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall." I mean, those songs, you could say those are fiercely political songs, but they also stand the test of time because they're very human stories. You know, I think if you are just blatantly, singing, you're singing about my dad. My dad loves to write political songs. I mean, but he write just he'll go ahead and just say like lines that are going on at the time. And I'll say something to him. It's funny. Him and our relationship's hilarious because we're both songwriters. So, you're always the worst critics of your parents on the planet. So there's always that conversation. It seems like I'm being just like.
But as
harsh.
you get older, perhaps you appreciate them more.
Oh, I appreciate him totally. He's wonderful, but
My son's starting to get it.
But I'll find myself doing that. But anyways, I think that, I mean, on the new album with, the multiverse songs of latter days, the title cut, really is more about, it is purely about, it's a portrait, or it's like a painting of, or a weight. It's kind of like, I mean, I attribute it kind of like to The Wasteland. I mean, I'm not as good at T.S. Eliot, obviously, but The Wasteland is kind of, if you read that poem, it's purely just imagery of that moment in time, but at the same sense, it's like you could read it, in the Renaissance period or in Rome or, anytime. And that's why I like, writing poetry to music as opposed to just really, being incredibly literal about everything all the time.
Were there songs that didn't make the album or that?
Basically, we chose exactly what we were going to put on it, and
recorded it here locally.
Yep, recorded it
in a studio.
Yeah, so Dwayne Trower over at Weights and Measures. We had the Wires playing with us, the string duo here. We had Jason Beers on a few tracks, which is great. I mean,
and you did the artwork, I imagine.
I did. Basically, I did all the photography, and I did all the graphics on it. Yeah, I mean, we're still in the process of getting that.
Well,
that
you've
footage.
also released 2 videos that go along with the songs.
Right.
They're great, and it seems like that would have taken a lot of creative energy to create the videos
Yeah.
as well.
So
are you going to do more of those?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing more of those. Yeah, and I love making videos. I mean, I that's the other strange passion I have. I like doing experimental video. And I shot a bunch for the songs of latter days. I shot a bunch of footage a long time ago of my dad with Super 8, and just kind of made a strange little documentary of him where, I'm taking images of like all of his writings and photographs, family photographs, and it just seemed strangely, it just fit automatically to it. So, and then Lenny, that, Bill Hume, Julie's husband, put that together. The footage in it is incredibly horrifying, actually.
That was a very compelling video. I knew nothing about her.
Yeah.
So that sent me down a rabbit hole about her. She was a real person and was tried as a war criminal, right?
Exactly.
At Nuremberg. That was an amazing story. What what can Kansas City and or the Heartland Song Network do for you
For
that
me,
you're not getting? What is it that collectively this community needs to succeed, to be able to keep our generative artists here in Kansas City, like you?
it'd be interesting.
Don't go to LA or
Right,
New
it
York.
would be interesting to actually create like, I mean, what I'm liking about it, it's kind of it's a collaborative effort, collective of artists, musicians. It'd be interesting to actually create like maybe a label around it. You actually
Mhm.
create compilation albums. You know, that'd be
You are not alone in that thought.
since we have all these great studios here.
Rex Pryor is definitely on board with that.
Yeah, to me that seems. I mean, and then the other half obviously would be how do we develop education programs? You know, I mean that would be great. I'd love to be a teacher for it.
Yeah, I think that, we kind of think in terms of, if we're thinking about brick and mortar, similar to what the music district is in Fort Collins.
Mm-hmm.
The danger in a brick and mortar is when something like this happens and you've got rent to pay and staff to pay.
Right.
How are you going to do that? So um, I see what we think we should be doing is just right now identifying who's here, because we don't even know what industry members are here that might be on board to try to get us to do that.
With the idea of the label, that would just put the idea of publicity,
Okay.
publicist, stuff like that,
Kind of like a 30 Tigers model where
right.
They help with the distribution and
right. The
publicity and
entire
all
thing,
that.
and
Okay.
it's purely Kansas City.
Okay, duly noted.
Kansas City driven, and yeah, that's that would be awesome. I would definitely sign up for something like that anytime.
What advice? You've been doing this for a while now. What advice would you give your 18-year-old Chris Hudson self, knowing what you know now?
Oh wow! Well, definitely would have told 18-year-old Chris to possibly take a little bit more time to get out of Kansas City, actually move somewhere else, but come back, of course, but
I remember that night in New Orleans, we were down there for Folk Alliance, and you'd not been there, I don't guess.
Yeah, I was
we're
going
up and down Frenchman Street, and we're going in and out of all these bars where all this music is playing, and your eyes were like the size of saucers, and you were saying, I can't believe I didn't know about this place. I must live here. I must move here. I must be here. Well, I'm going, no, you can't.
That was
funny.
Yeah,
I thought, at the time, he's dead serious. This is like a life-changing moment for him. He's going to go home and pack his bags and come down here.
Well,
but for the pandemic, maybe you would have.
Yeah, it probably would have changed. Yeah. But the main thing about that experience, I love the Folk Alliance experience, but boy, I don't think I spent hardly any time at the Folk Alliance checking out anything except what I had to do my job, and I played a couple of showcases, but in between I was always
that's a function of that city for sure.
I was on the Frenchman Street. I was like, well, I know that hotel is amazing, man, but it's confined.
Did you go to Montreal?
I did not go.
Montreal, of course, was in January in Montreal, and it was 6 degrees and snowing.
Right.
You weren't going to be going out up and down the streets.
Right. It makes sense there.
Checking out the city.
Right.
We were hunkered down in that hotel to survive because it was not friendly to humans.
Totally brutal. I would have loved to have gone to that. I just couldn't put the couldn't put the money together.
Well, New Orleans was a life-changing thing in a lot of ways. It was the impetus for this organization.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons we've gotten to know you better.
Yeah.
Because I think our relationship with you before was coming out to Mike Kelly's every once in a while and seeing Gully Welcher.
Right.
We had you as one of our artists when we were doing the Bloody Mary Morning.
That was great.
That was a lot of fun. We'll get back to that again someday.
Yeah.
But this whole experience,
making Mike Kelly's a listening space was like the best thing
I've
ever experienced in my life.
We have every intention of doing that again, but instead of just Danny and I being the sponsors, it'll be the Heartland Song Network.
That'd be perfect.
So welcome to the jungle.
Yeah. So could I
Yeah.
give a kind of like a little plug for the other project that I have going on?
Yeah.
So Gully Washer, yeah, we're also making an album. So we're currently in Dwayne Trower's studio doing that.
Is it going to be more of a bluegrass?
No,
vibe?
no,
No?
that album, that's the thing about Gully Washer. It's never been really a bluegrass band.
Just because it has a banjo in it.
Yeah, it just has a banjo. So yeah, the album is it's interesting.
What's going to be the lineup on that?
Well,
musical?
You saw Mark, the trumpet
player, yes.
So everybody, so Matt and Sam are still there, the bass player and Sam, and then we have Devin Turan on pedal steel
from the Timbers.
Yep, he's playing on a few tracks, and my friend Chad Brothers, of course, is there. I had to try to get him in there, and he's so gracious to come in and play.
He's a good picker too.
Yeah, we always.
I think he's from Winfield, Kansas. I think it's required.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to be from there unless you can pick.
He's doing some good stuff up at KKFI.
He sure is.
Seems to be able to keep it together, man. That'd be a hard job.
It is. It's 100,000 watt blowtorch of creative insanity, and he's right in the middle of it.
So, right. Yeah. It's that's the thing about it. Just trying to keep the lights on in general right now. I'm hoping that regardless what occurs after this election, I just know that we're all going to end up hopefully surviving this. We're still here, at this very second, this very moment, and that's a good thing. So I think
it is a good thing. And Gully Washer, Multiverse. Mm-hmm. Any plans for the Barred Owls to do anything?
The Barred Owls are basically just it's a chance to get like my friend Alexis Barkley to come and play.
Yeah.
And basically that's I'm doing a gig today with him. We're doing outdoors though, so it's
might be the last one.
Might be the last one
of the year.
Right. But Barred Owls, but ultimately, yeah, that group is. It's kind of like when I need like to change the name of my band so I could get a gig. That's kind of what it is.
They can't keep Gully Washer, Barred Owls, and.
But Sam would totally disagree because he came up with the name. So.
Yeah. Well, any questions for me?
Yeah. So ultimately speaking, I think it's interesting. I dig your show. You have an interesting. I really enjoy the choice of music you do. So how are you getting? You have all these connections with all the festivals around. You've been you go to Woody Fest. You do all these things like that. But how did you get all connected with all that stuff? Was it purely through KKFI? The interest. Is that?
KKFI has been the driving force for the last 10 years. Uh-huh. But my involvement with music and musicians and supporting them and all that goes back to my high school years, more than 50 years ago. Huh. My interest in the festivals and kind of zeroing in on a particular artist, and then I it's just an innate desire I have to help somebody realize that, because I feel now that this is kind of a holy trinity, the art needs to get out there. Uh-huh. And so it's kind of evolved over the years, but it's just, Danny and I talk about this all the time. We're always waiting to hear that next song that gives us the goosebumps.
Right. Well,
That's why I go to the festivals. That's why I listen to almost every single piece of music that's sent to me via email or whatever. I'm on the search for the Holy Grail. As a listener, I'm on the
I like how you compile your songs and put them together.
Yeah, sometimes it's honestly it's completely random. Mm-hmm. I think, mm-hmm. And then as I listen to the playlists more, or I actually do the show and then mm-hmm. listen to the show later.
Right.
Like, wow, that was really.
Yeah,
that was really something.
Yeah, every time I tune in, I'm into it. And it's. I like the fact that you always put local music on too, which is awesome.
I just feel that's really important to do. There are some times when there's a theme to the particular show, uh-huh. or a theme. just to try to get it organized,
Uh-huh.
you know, because I do have thousands of songs to choose from and hundreds and hundreds of artists. So, but it's putting playlists together is something that I've been doing forever.
Mhm.
And in the old days of cassettes
Right. So
and CDs,
mixtapes.
I would make mixtapes and CDs for people's birthdays, for their Christmas presents, for their I mean, whatever
So
the occasion was. If they were leaving town, I would make a Bon Voyage CD for them.
So do you have like tons of notes, like exactly, you know, dates and everything?
I used to keep a lot of that kind of stuff, but I do have a record of some of it. But no, it's just too much.
I find that really interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've got audio of the first, you know, shows that I did 20 years ago when I was a guest DJ.
Wow.
And I did used to use a yellow legal pad and write everything down and listen to the CDs and start and stop them on my little boombox or whatever. It has evolved to the point now where I do everything on my iPad, and everything is, I download it first and upload it, and it's instead of spending 3 or 4 to 5 hours putting a show together, I've literally put shows together sometimes in 10 or 15 minutes because the technology allows me to do that.
Right. That's a nice thing.
But it also allows me to change it that quickly as well.
Right.
Or I can pull things from, I have 2 iPads, and so I've got SoundCloud and Bandcamp up on one and Apple on another, and so the technology has changed exponentially since I started doing it, but the process and the feeling in my head or in my ear really hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean, I just like I like the choices you make.
Well, thank you.
They've always been...
It's what gets me up makes me get up week after week at 4:30 in the morning to go in and do it, because I still like to do it. And we've been talking about doing another show. I'm thinking about proposing an additional show that's the Heartland Song Network Radio Hour.
Nice. That'd be great.
And using it as a platform for
I mean,
local and regional artists.
I think that there's definitely a need for that. I mean, and I think it's what's good about it is that you're mixing up all kinds of different genres too with that, and I think that's important.
I think it's important for Heartland to keep getting the message out there. We're not just about singer-songwriters or folk music, or country music or roots music or whatever you want to call it. We have highlighted a choral artist, a hip-hop artist, an indigenous roots artist. We're all over the place. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of it, if we have a generative artist here in town that's creating opera, or you know, one of the things we haven't done is really rock and blues, because there's so much of that elsewhere already.
Right, but I mean, it's open. I mean,
it's open.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome.
Write a great rock song. Write a great blues song. Bring it.
I've been thinking about
do it.
I have like this isolation tracks like demo series I've been doing since the beginning of the year. I'm quietly releasing that in the next couple of days as well, which is pretty funny. But I gotta keep making like these massive like multi-track projects. So a lot of my writing in general, that's where it's going. It's going into those little demos. So those demos will definitely end up in one of my groups, most likely.
Do you see yourself doing this still 10, 20 years from now?
Yeah, I don't see anything else, because I mean, I don't know if I have any other skills at this point. So.
Well, I wish I had a tenth of your skills. That's for sure.
Yeah, but if I had to go like become a mechanic or something, or do something.
Well,
like
then
that.
you guys call Danny Powell. He can.
Yeah, just like Danny.
He can fix anything.
Danny have to show me how to do all that.
I don't know what we're gonna do when he doesn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like he's downstairs practicing right now.
He is.
That's good.
He's obsessed with his thumb right now. His thumb is.
Well, you heard his. Yeah, he totally.
His nemesis is his thumb right now.
He keeps like cutting it in half or something.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago.
Slicing and dicing.
Right. Hey.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this today.
I'm so honored to do this month. So hopefully, it gets the message out about Heartland Song Network.
Well, get the message out about Chris Hudson and all the hats that he has.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.